Headphone highlights. Hello, I'm Master Marslander, and welcome to the new studio. Well, or at least mostly. It's not exactly quite ready yet. It's not really where I want it to be at the moment. In fact, you could probably even hear a little bit of an echo in my voice because the room still needs to get a little bit more treatment. But it's at least, I think, in a good enough place right now to do some reviews, which is a good thing because we got a lot of catching up to do. And yes, I will be doing a nice little studio tour sometime in the future, so you can look forward to that. But for now, we need to do some reviews. Today we have two super budget-friendly IEMs that are, spoiler alert, an absolutely incredible value, both of them. Today we have the ARTTI T10 and the EPZ Q1 Pro, both coming in at between $30 and $40 respectively. And oh my gosh, is that an insane value? Let's dig into it. Let's talk build, starting with the ARTTI T10. The T10 offers 14.2mm planar magnetic drivers. The shell is a simple PC molded shell with some brushed metal accents. They are 32 ohms of impedance with 96 decibels of sensitivity, and they terminate to a simple 2-pin connector for your cable. The cable itself is a 4-core, high-purity copper and silver-coated cable that comes in options of 3.5mm or 4.4 pentagon for your end termination there. It says just ARTTI very simply right there on the end. The cable is a 4-weave down the base. It's very reminiscent of like the S12 from LaShore. And then it splits into dual weaves into that 2-pin connector that go into the shells. Getting a bit of a closer look here at the shells themselves. They're just kind of a plasticky feel. They're not particularly well, I don't want to say they're not well made. They are well made. They're not very premium feeling. They're very, just basic kind of plastic. That metal is kind of nice. On the side here, it does say T10 ARTTI, and I believe somewhere around the back here. Oh yeah, right there. Okay, it's really hard to see it, but that right there is your R for your right channel indicator. And then of course the other shell will have L for left. It's subtle, a little hard to see, but they are labeled. Thank goodness for that. Really appreciate that. They're a very simple design, very simple look and aesthetic, but very functional, very practical kind of IEM. And man, just wait till we start talking about their performances. The EPZ Q1 Pros, in contrast, offer 10mm LCP plus PU drivers. The shells are of 3D printed resin and are, just a huge contrast to the T10s. These are really, really striking. Let me just go ahead and show off these shells just a little bit more because man, are they pretty. These little resin shells are gorgeous. Look at how those colors shimmer and reflect in there. Subtly says EPZ on the side there, and then on the side of the shells here, we have our left and right clearly marked and indicated with Q1 Pro there as well. Also along the shell, you're going to find a porthole. Very, very pretty IEM. Really get that up there so you can really see. But man, are they just good looking IEMs. I love all the colors, man. Beautiful. They are 32 ohms of impedance with 100 decibels of sensitivity, and they also, like the T10s, accept a simple 2-pin connector from your cables. The stock cable is pretty basic. It's quite a lot thinner than it is on the T10, and it terminates to 3.5mm here. Though you do have the option of either having the basic standard 3.5mm cable like I have here, or there's also a 3.5mm cable that also incorporates a microphone, or you can also choose the Type-C USB version of the cable. But the cable I have here, it's nice, it's fine, it's just a little on the thinner side of things. It is still a 4-weave, just like with the T10, and it splits here to another dual weave into the actual IEM drivers. It's overall a pretty simple cable with really kind of a nice ergonomic shape on the connector over here, but otherwise simple, thin, though it does kind of have more of a tendency to get all tangled up and messy than something like what you get with the T10s here, just because I think primarily how thin it is. But it's still a very nice looking cable and functions very, very well. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the accessories packages for these IEMs, starting with the ARTTI T10 here. Simple box, white, simple box. It's got some kind of basic specs back here, nothing too fancy or too in-depth, but it's a decent box. Slides over to a more kind of simple box, very minimalist box. And then inside there, behind our foamy bits, you're going to find some literature. It's just your basic kind of literature, a card, and your instructional manual. Then we have our carrying case. Go ahead and move that box to the side here. Here's your nice carrying case. It's just kind of a canvas case. It's nice. It's durable, very, very firm and robust. Just a nice kind of subtle off gray here and already printed right there on the front. Very simple. And then it just unzips with total ease to open up to just, you know, put your IEM in there. And then you do have some additional kind of basic tips to swap in and out of. You get two different kinds of sets, but otherwise it's all very standard stuff. But the case is very nice. Now let's take a quick look at the accessories package for the Q1 Pros. Black box this time. It has this nice kind of indented, embossed graphic here, which is shimmery and cool. I like that. It says on the side here, the artist who makes his own headphones. Is that me? Am I the artist who makes his own headphone? Is this what I would make? I don't know. Okay then. And then here on the back, you get more of kind of your standard spec out, but you get this nifty little frequency response graph here as well. How accurate this graph is, I don't really know, but there's kind of your first look at what you can expect from the frequency response. So that's always nice to see. I like it when they include that right on the outside of packaging. So at least you have some kind of baseline going into it, knowing what kind of sound you're probably going to end up getting out of it. Now let's go ahead and open this up with magnets this time. Nice fancy magnets to this very nice little display, which is actually just some light paper. Your IEMs would sit right into here. This nice little EPZ easy pull tug. I like that. And then we have storage box. Okay, let's have a look. You are noticing probably that there is no carrying case. That is because instead of a carrying case, inside here we're going to find a simple little cloth bag. It's like a micro suede kind of bag. It's not exactly micro suede, but it's just a simple bag. I do prefer carrying cases over bags. That's probably of no surprise, but in terms of bags, it's a bag. It's a decent bag. Other things you're going to find in the pouch here in the storage box is, of course, your literature and then some extra tips as well. Pretty basic standard stuff in both cases, though I will say that having the included carrying case on the T10s, I think, puts the accessories package of the T10 a little bit further up than it is with the Q1 Pros here. However, I do think that the Q1 Pros offer a little bit of a more interesting unboxing experience, a little bit better presentation. Maybe that's just me, but I like it. So we've got some very different kind of methodology of design and function in these IEMs, but let's see how their designs differ in terms of how they fit and how comfortable they are, starting again with the ARTTI T10s here. That simple round shape actually offers a very nice fit in the ear. It's a little bit interesting in that for them to fit in my ear properly, the kind of I gotta learn this new orientation over my faces. As you can see, it really points straight forward from my ear here, which is a little unusual. Usually I feel like IEMs are a little more like in this direction, pointing more upward, but for the ARTTIs to fit me properly, they really do have to be pointing forward like this. But once they do, once they're in there and they're pointing in the right direction, feels great. Feels great. They're really, really light. Just that simple plastic molding. And the fit and isolation is quite good. My voice is very muffled. I can't hear really any of the fans going on in the room right now. So the isolation is decent. It's pretty good isolation right out of the gate. And the basic ear tips, they feel like any other kind of silicone ear tips. They're nice. They're fine. I don't have any complaints. This is because they're so light and the cable itself is also decently light. They're very comfortable. I could wear these without hardly any fatigue for relatively long listening sessions. I have no complaints. They fit very well and they are very comfortable. I should probably let you actually see what they look like. Oh my God, I'm sorry, I'm out of practice. Anyway, it's a pretty simple look. It's really unassuming, I guess. It doesn't look like much going on there, but it does a great job. Fits great. Now going over here to a little bit of a bit more elegant solution, the elegant build of the Q1 Pro. Let's see how they do in the ear. And actually, surprisingly, the Q1 Pros here are lighter than the T10s by a pretty noticeable amount. These feel so teeny tiny in my ears, but, and again, you see that how they're kind of pointing a little bit more upward. That's what I'm a bit more used to in terms of the fit. They're not pointing straight forward like the T10s do. But man, yeah, these feel excellent. I think that the shell design on the Q1 Pros here is a bit more to the ergonomic shape of my canal. Your mileage may vary, but these are, I would say, a little bit more comfortable. Isolation is about the same. My voice is maybe a little bit less muffled than it was in the T10s, but I still can't hear my fans or really anything else. So the passive isolation is still pretty good, pretty good. And the lightness and the comfort is really quite excellent. This cable here basically weighs nothing. You can't really feel the cable at all. There's no cable harmonics. It's great. It's a great fit. Excellent design in the shell here, at least for my ears. It really, man, it's an excellent fit for real. So yeah, comfort, phenomenal. While we're on the topic of comfort, EPZ over here actually went ahead and sent me some of their new M100 ear tips as well. And these are really, really interesting. If you want to pop them open and take a look, they are remarkably clear. Just super, super clear silicone. And oh my gosh, they feel amazing. They feel incredible. They're just these extremely light, extremely soft tips. Let me bring one of these up for contrast. So these are just the standard tips that come with the Q1 Pros and pretty much every other IEM. You've seen these before, they're no big deal. But check out in contrast, the M100s here. So yeah, they just have this remarkably soft clear coat silicone, and it makes them for an incredibly comfortable fit. I mean, absolutely wonderful fit and finish with these things. And they don't just improve comfort. These M100 ear tips are fascinating because in both the cases of these IEMs and other IEMs I have tried these with, one major advantage that you get with the M100s over just some stock tips that you get in most IEMs is isolation. Oh my gosh, the sound isolation with the M100s is incredible. Like a whole other tier of isolation compared to these stock silicone tips. It's night and day. Absolutely phenomenal. Almost like, I don't know, I hesitate to say this, but the M100s are almost like having a natural solution to like active noise cancellation. They're that isolating. They're phenomenal. It's really, really crazy impressive. And because the isolation with these is so much better than with stock ear tips, you gain so many other benefits. They provide clearer sound across the board with everything I've put them on. Everything, including the two here. Clearer sound that enhances the natural characteristics of the IEMs that you are using them with. I mean, no shot. They're genuinely amazing. And I wouldn't think that a simple ear tip would really offer that much degree of an improvement or a change. But you know, it's actually kind of a similar sort of adjustment from going with a typical silicone tip to memory foam tips. Big difference there too, right? Well, you kind of gain the same benefits with the M100s, but without the kind of pressure fatigue that foam tips give you. And that's a big deal for me because as much as I prefer the sound of foam tips, they always kind of bother me over time. But these things are genuinely amazing. So good. Okay, so now let's go ahead and start getting into sound performance for these two very impressive IEMs. Starting, of course, with the T10s here, ARTTI T10s. So they're phenomenal. They're pretty excellent. So, and one of the most impressive feats about the T10s is their sub bass performance. The sub bass extension on these is fantastic for the price. Genuinely fantastic. It's not the biggest, deepest, hard-hittingest, like resonating bass listening experience you're going to get from an IEM, but the extension is wonderful. Genuinely great extension, even if the kind of representation of that sub bass and the bass in general is a little subtle overall. It definitely hits down, really, really down there. The extension is fantastic. And these characteristics go into the mid bass as well. The mid bass on the T10 is very, very well controlled and very natural. It's not overly bombastic and overly flavored or overly bloated. It's not really bloated at all. It's very, very natural, very, very neutral. It can get some good deep kicks and thumps, but it's never overwhelming, nor is it ever veiling. It's just a very honest, true, and mature sounding mid bass. Going into your mid-range is very smooth and relaxed with just a little hint of warmth in there, but otherwise just overall very neutral, very natural sounding. Vocals are clear and very well represented, though they're not the most forward vocals there, nor are they really far back. They're not pushed back very far. They're just not very forward and in your face. They're just kind of out there with the rest of your mid-range and your high mids, but come out through very clear and isolate enough that you don't feel like you're really losing any information from your vocals. And they sound overall very natural, very, for the most part, fairly real, though sometimes the vocals can get this sense of almost a little too bright at times, but I found that to be very, very rare. Going into your high mids, you start to really benefit with those planar drivers. Things are really quick and snappy with good resolution. And going into your treble range, that snappiness starts to really come out and you're getting some real nice crispness and some shimmering in your treble range. It's really, really lovely, though it's never fatiguing. It's never too bright in that kind of irritating tone. It always stayed controlled enough that it never got to that point, but everything still was able to hit nice and high just without ever getting fatiguing. It's not the most resolving treble range, but it more than exceeded my expectations for a IEM in this price range. Going into the technicalities, the soundstage on these is a little bit narrow. It's not beaming directly into your ears, but it's definitely not giving you a huge sense of space, but it does give you at least some sense of air and space and surroundings. So there is a little bit of soundstage, it is there, but I wouldn't expect kind of a huge theatrical experience out of these. The imaging on these things is genuinely great. It's very precise, very accurate, and very responsive. Things are very well separated and isolated so you know where they're coming from and what you're hearing. And you're able to get this real definition of layering in your music. So the imaging is just genuinely excellent. Dynamics are a little bit on the subtle end for the T10, but they were engaging enough to be fun and energetic for most listening experiences. Overall, the T10 is just a very quick and nimble and well-balanced IEM. They're very natural, very neutral, maybe not the most exciting kind of sound, but definitely very accurate, and that sub-bass extension is phenomenal. There's no kind of frills or special coloring or characteristics being added here. They're again just kind of a very neutral and precise IEM that are good all-arounders for most listening, so kind of an everyday daily driver. But particularly if you want to dig a little bit deeper into your music, you really want to have a bit of a more analytical experience, T10s are going to do that for you. Now let's talk the Q1 Pros. Starting with the bass extension. Again, pretty great sub-bass extension, probably not quite as extending as the T10s, but enough sub-bass presence here that I have no complaints. I'm able to get that sub-bass performance hitting me nice, good, and deep, and man, is it super satisfying. The overall bass presence on the Q1 Pros here, much more present than it is on the T10. These are extremely bombastic. The bass is big, it's really hard hitting, it's deep and impactful, but it still doesn't bleed or bloom into anywhere else you don't want it to be. It's still very well controlled, but definitely a much more bombastic, energetic experience than you get out of the T10s. It's a very crunchy and impactful bass while still being very kind of respective of the mid-range. And the mid-range itself is very refined. It's very clean and clear, if obviously maybe not a little bit leaning on the warmer side of things, but it's overall just really well resolving and very well represented. Vocals are a lot more forward on the Q1 Pros than they are on the T10s. Rather than the vocals being kind of like along with everything else in that range, vocals come out, they're isolated, much better isolated, and again, just more forward and intimate. So you're really getting this really clean, clear vocal representation that you have a much more of a feel for than you do out of the T10s. It's just a very intimate and very focused vocal range. It's really, really well isolated and very confident. And the treble range, man, it can really, really sparkle and shimmer up there with lots of nice kind of fluttering, though it can get, on some occasions, a little bit on the bright side. The treble detail is excellent with really good snap and crack, and it really can get those high highs, but again, just sometimes it can get on the edge of being maybe a little bit too much. The treble range is very well represented. You get lots of sparkle and fluttering up there. You feel it kind of shimmer around you. It's got really impressive amounts of kind of detail, and it's pretty resolving. It's also very quick, high intensity, high tempo kind of highs you're getting in that high treble range. That's really precise without being too fatiguing, but again, sometimes that treble can get just a little bit too bright. But for the most part, I found that to be a pretty rare occurrence. In terms of technicalities, soundstage, you get quite a bit more soundstage with the Q1 Pros than you do with the T10s. It's not a huge amount of soundstage. They're not an enormous sounding IEM, but it's more of like a kind of a mid-range sort of soundstage where you feel a nice separation kind of out to here. So you have this sense of spaciousness between you and what you're listening to. So good, decent mid-range soundstage. And the imaging is also really quite great. Maybe not as precise as it is in the T10s, but it's overall really, really quite good. I'm able to easily isolate where things are and where they're coming from, so it's fairly precise, and it is omnidirectional all around you. Especially for gaming, I feel like the Q1 Pros do an exceptionally good job for gaming. The T10s over here do fine for gaming, but these are particularly great for gaming imaging, or just gaming immersion in general. And then the dynamics on the Q1 Pro are quite a bit more energetic and engaging than they are on the T10. Very, very fun, very dramatic, with some nice visceral slams and hard-hitting attacks. Overall, they just have really great tuning, really fun sort of tuning. They're quick, nimble, and bombastic. They have great control and precision, but not in a way that makes them sound kind of sterile or overly clinical. This is more an IEM that I would say is meant to be jammed out to. It's maybe less of a all-rounder, everyday IEM than the T10s. Certainly not as clinical as the T10s, but if you just want to listen to some high-tempo, fun, bombastic stuff, like some, I don't know, dance or EDM, you're going to have a freaking fantastic head-bopping time with the Q1 Pros. These are both extremely impressive IEMs, especially in their price bracket. They are truly price-to-performance phenomenons. Absolutely incredible price to performance here. They offer two very distinct listening experiences, with the T10 being kind of a more mature and reference maybe sort of sound, to the Q1 Pro's more energetic, lively, and charismatic sort of sound. Both of these are true champions of the super affordable IEM space, and I think can easily satisfy whoever is leaning on one side of the spectrum or the other. The IEM space is just evolving at ludicrous speeds. Things seem to be changing dramatically day by day, and the value to performance is just getting tighter and tighter and tighter. These are genuinely amazing IEMs for their price. And they're such big, significant improvements to IEMs in this range 3 to 4 years ago. It's insane. And there's still just so much more crazy cool gear in the IEM space to be talking about. In fact, the very next IEM video we'll be having here on the channel is going to be some really, really genuinely beautiful pieces. So you can look forward to that very soon. That's about it. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll be seeing you again very soon.